I love to hear that.
I do want to talk about some other things that have happened. You know, the moving and shaking behind the scenes. Rock is not only taking center stage on TV, but also in the boardroom. He's now a board member for WWE or TKO more specifically. And there's not a single McMahon family who's on the TKO board now. Linda's not on it. Stephanie's not on it. Certainly Vince isn't on it. And not even Triple H is on it. Now, Triple H was on the board of WWE. He is not on the board of TKO. And there's a theory put out by Mike Johnson that perhaps Brian Gewirtz is here, or Gewirtz, easy for me to say. Great guy, by the way, is in the mix. Mike Johnson wrote, Brian will be in the mix as the voice representing The Rock in the WWE creative process going forward. There are some who believe Brian will be around physically, at least for major shows going forward, and could even be there as plan B if Endeavor ever needs to pivot WWE's direction and go with a Dwayne Johnson back creative team down the line. And I'm going to tell you, that got my attention. First of all, let me say this. You couldn't have a better brand ambassador than The Rock. I know he had a little controversy with Oprah. I know the Black Adam thing didn't work out, and maybe he had a spat with that director, and maybe it lost some money. I know the XFL is restructuring and lost some money last year, but that dude has so many more wins than losses. If you take a look at the scoreboard, everything he touches turns to gold, whether it's his tequila or anything else. So I'm confident that The Rock is going to be successful on camera and behind the scenes with WWE. And you couldn't ask for, I mean, this is a guy who not too long ago was being whispered about as being a potential presidential candidate. How could you not pull for that guy? How could you not want that guy to represent your brand? And if you were a WWE fan for the last 20 years, how could you not be excited about Brian being back in creative? Brian was responsible for some of our absolute favorite WWE moments. You worked with Brian a little bit. That dude is incredible at his job, is he not?
Absolutely. The most exciting, rewarding, fulfilling, whatever other adjective you could come up with, moment I've ever had on camera in any company was created by Brian. And that was the
reveal.
The reveal, the old man gimmick with the mask. That was all Brian.
That's Billy and Chuck wedding.
Brian is so good. He's so good and he's so level-headed. He would be a massive asset to the creative team, whether he was leading it or a part of it. I don't know where that's going to go. This is kind of the first time hearing about that aspect of it. I did read, I think, that he was going to be representing Rock, and I think that makes sense. I don't think Rock's going to be sitting in creative meetings all week long. But so, I mean, it makes sense to me, but he's so gifted that that's a big plus for WWE. That's a bonus of getting Rock on your board is getting Brian on your creative team. Absolutely.
Well, let's also talk about the way this board changed, because I'll be honest, it sort of made me sit up and pay a little more attention when I saw that Brian might be a plan B. I say that because we know who plan A is, and that's Triple H. And I know that there are a lot of wrestling fans who think everything's wrestling and just believe everything from back in the day. But I've had more than a few people show me clips of Bret Hart talking about the relationship between The Rock and Shawn Michaels and Triple H when The Rock was a young superstar in WWE. Let's roll that.
And dressing down poor Dwayne, he was the Intercontinental Champion. He's the young guy with getting his big first break in the business and stuff, and the nicest guy in the world. And Shawn came in and just dressed him down and chewed him out. And I believe he told him to never do a drop kick off the top rope ever again, because that was his move. That was what he was mad about. And then he slammed the door and walked out, and Rock was just, because Shawn had a lot of weight, he was a pretty important guy for the company and a veteran kind of guy. dressing him down like that, and there he was apologizing and said he didn't know it was, like he thought it would be okay. And I remember the door closed after Sean left, and I said, "That's bullshit. That is total bullshit." I said, "Nobody owns the drop kick off the top. Like you can do that. Owen does it all the time. Why has he never cut a promo on Owen?"
Yeah.
I said, "They're just busting your chops."
Yeah.
And they're trying to work on you. And Triple H was the same. He was always out to get Rock. Sean was out to get him, and they just worked on him and worked on him and worked on him. And the guy left they was still in the doghouse with those guys. They wanted him as bad as they wanted me out. Like they were after him. And for me, like maybe a year later, he started to get his break and started to take off in WWE. And I'm so glad he overcame their petty bullshit that they were trying to do all the time to him.
Yeah. Just jealousy?
Just jealousy.
So listen, I know that's a little silly and maybe it's a little tinfoil hat, but there's a whole lot of people who say that in real life, they had more than just a professional rivalry. I mean, JR's talked about it on his podcast back when they were both trying to jockey for position as to who was going to be the next guy as Intercontinental Champion in 1998. And I just find it interesting that, well, Hunter lost his board seat in September. Rock got that spot in January. Rock's agent, Endeavor. Where did Nick Khan used to work? Endeavor. Who put together the SmackDown deal for WWE? Nick Khan of Endeavor.
Well, Nick Khan was CAA, wasn't he?
It's all the same thing.
Not really. But go ahead.
Well, here's what I mean. Nick Khan's sister is the showrunner was the showrunner for Young Rock. There's a relationship with Nick Khan and The Rock. I don't think that's a secret.
And Ari Emanuel.
When The Rock went to visit Deion Sanders at College Game Day, Nick Khan's there. I just find it interesting. Hunter lost his seat. He's no longer on the board. He's head of creative. He's creative director, but not a board member. But The Rock is there. Who was The Rock? Who was Nick Khan's old boss? Ari Emanuel. They did so many deals together. They have a long-standing history, Ari and Nick. And now Hunter answers to Nick. Nick answers to Ari. And The Rock's the biggest star in the world. And in the agency game, it's not on the org chart, but talent hires an agent. So in a weird way, Ari works for The Rock. The Rock has all the leverage. This is The Rock's WWE. And for Hunter to lose his seat, and now there being a rumor, hey, Brian might be plan B. It's like, wow, yikes. And from an Endeavor standpoint, that Netflix deal is huge. Because if The Rock's on the board, gee, do you think The Rock's going to wind up making some movies for Netflix? Doing some programs for Netflix? Are people wearing their tinfoil hat, Eric? What do you think about all this?
I think a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
I think a bit. And look, I don't know to what degree, but I guess human nature allows me to believe that there may be some long-held resentment there. I mean, it's happened in the past.
That's
There are some
life.
people, yeah, I mean, it exists. There are certain situations where if I was thrust into it with somebody that I don't trust, not to name names, it would be an uncomfortable situation for me. And if I had leverage, I would do what I could to mitigate that. So, yeah, I guess it could be true that the perceived heat between Rock and Hunter based on something that happened 25 years ago. I guess it could be true. It's human nature. Never bet against it. The rest of it, the politics, the relationship between Nick Khan and Ari Emanuel, I think it's a little muddy, to be honest with you. Suffice to say right now, everybody's working for Ari Emanuel, but indeed, Rocky is probably Ari Emanuel's biggest client. So there's that dynamic, and it is a fact. The degree to which it has influence over decisions, none of us know. We can only guess from the sidelines, but it is an interesting situation. And when you told me about Brian, in somebody else's quote, I think it was Mike Johnson,
Yes.
who's been on the money, by the way. Kudos
Yes.
to Mike Johnson. Kudos to Mike Johnson, PW Insider, been on the money with this stuff. I think it's a necessary plan B. And as much as I don't want to venture back into this territory, I have to at this point, because the fact that Paul Levesque was on the board during a time there was a vote against Vince coming back and then a vote to bring him back. The fact that Paul Levesque is married to Stephanie McMahon, the fact that Paul Levesque spent as much time as he did in terms of proximity to Vince McMahon, he is a likely candidate for a conversation in terms of everything that went down. And it would be absolutely a breach of corporate fiduciary responsibility for them not to have a plan B, because you don't know what you don't know at this point.
That's very fair.
So I choose to kind of acknowledge but not put much stock into any of the tinfoil hat political espionage nonsense. I understand why people do, and it's not that it's not interesting. I just don't buy into it, because I look at the more logical, practical moves that they have to make, and having Brian there, again, you're faced with an uncertain situation, and the only way to combat an uncertain situation is to have as many options and assets at your disposal as possible. That's the way I look at this.